Hello. So it's really early, but it's not really early. It's like 7:09 a.m. But I went to bed kind of late. But I'm here because I really want to talk about Lemuria, and I don't know if I'll get a chance. I don't know if what I want to talk about will end up going into Black people as well. But I really want to talk about Lemuria. So I made a little bowl of information. I can't really show you. Also, anyways, so I made a little, it's just filled with water and then three rocks from this very special beach. And I'm gonna I'm gonna try and see if I can learn anything from it. Um, Last time, it was a long time ago, but I um, experimented with using water as an information source, and it worked. So I want to try and do that again. Maybe a little bit less. I mean, it's really early and I'm tired, but I really do want to get to it. One thing I will say is I think Lemuria was led by our left brain, our left hand, because when I look in the mirror, you know how you can look in the mirror and if it has those side panels that are still reflectors, then you can see like a third eye, like right here, and it's just usually your other eye. It's usually your left eye. I was trying to see which one it was. Um, ooh, a sore throat. Anyways, it's usually your left eye. It's funny that it would be your left eye because, well, you know what? Yeah, you should look at it because it's kind of fun to see what it would look like if your third eye was like physical. But anyways, I think Lemuria was led by their left brain. I just think there was a lot more. Maybe it was just more dominant. Damn. So I saw 111 and I saw 222 and it stayed on 222 for a long time. It was like you will see me. And so what else? So what was? I'm trying to pick up messages wherever they come because it's like, bleh. Anyways, okay, so well, with 222, that talks about balance. So let's try and think about what that would talk about. I also think that it was probably like a free love vibe. I feel like it was a free love vibe over there all the way back then. And I feel like it was normal to be, and not like normal, like not because everything's normal, but I feel like it was very widely accepted and very deeply understood that everything is fluid, and that means the way you express yourself, how you exist, um, things like gender. I don't even know if that was really a thing. I don't feel like it was. Maybe that's just my own desire, but I do think so. Oh, I'll talk about this. So, I've had this experience recently where actually for a while I felt that I am non binary, but I also still feel like a woman, and I really deeply connect with being a woman, but I also really connect with being non binary. And so I feel like I'm a non binary woman. And I'm only laughing because I used to be an asshole and think that didn't understand how that was possible. I wasn't like going around being like, you're not, blah, blah, blah. I just had a bit of a block that was arrogant also and made me think, because I thought that if people were saying that they were taking away space from non-binary people because I had a block. Okay, I had a block. It's the same block I had where for some reason, well, not for some reason, I didn't understand that you could be bisexual. This was when I was very young. I was like in middle school, and I didn't think that because I didn't know that bisexual was even a word, and I also didn't. I grew up in a household that did not talk about gay people, and so the only representation of queerness that I saw was being gay, which was strictly for men, and being a lesbian, which was strictly for women. And so there was no non-binary. There was no such thing as a trans person. There was no such thing as bisexual, asexual, demi, this or that. It was very binary, very rigid. And so that's what I thought the truth was. And yeah, I had to unlearn and all of that. I was never around going like, your truth isn't real. Though in middle school, I did say, you can't be bisexual. And then actually, my friend corrected me and she was like, yes, you can. And I was like, oh, okay. So, and then here I am being bisexual. And I also resonate with being pansexual. I honestly, in my personal world, I consider bisexual and pansexual the same thing. Because I'm not someone who's like, I'm binary focused. Like, I don't give a fuck about the binary. So it's not like I just like men and just like women and just like cis men and just like cis women. Like, no. So yeah, for me, it's the same, but I understand that for other people, there might be a difference. Um, why was I talking about this? I was talking about this because I was talking about fluidity and expression. Yeah, like I feel like there were things that just I don't even feel like this was like a conversation. I feel like everything was very free love, free expression, very open. Um, and that was just how it was naturally. And I feel like there was an embracement of all of the different energies within us. And I feel like it wasn't just divine feminine and divine masculine. I feel like I don't even know if we really even, like, I wonder if there was a language to describe it at all, or if it was just feeling. And you know what? With the whole like language thing, sometimes language can be limiting. Language is a very powerful, incredible gift, and I'm a writer, so I love words. Um, but I love the feeling that words can produce when paired together to create a certain energy, and the way it sits on your tongue or in your mind. Um, and I wonder if in Lemuria, like, language was very limited, and maybe instead a lot of the communication was, trusted through your emotional body. Maybe you were speaking more through your emotional body and more through your energetic body. And that's how your throat chakra was activated more so than, you know, talking audibly. Uh, which would have been really interesting. I wonder. That would have also just opened up so much, especially around like social classes and hierarchy and academia and things like that. Because if we're not having these standards for language and grammar and things like that, and how you speak and what you can, and if you can read, and what type of terms you know, and how well you write, and it's more so about your emotional expression, which is a shared experience, which is very different for everyone, and it's immediately unique, which just inherently accepts then that everybody's way of expression is good, because there is no wrong way, because it's just what you come with when you're born. I feel like that would be so magical, and I feel like that was a thing. Like, like we didn't even really have a very vast language. Um, and it was mostly emotional and mostly feeling. Um, and that's why we were able to put so much into the crystals and the rocks. And that's why so many of our early civilizations, for a lot of us, our storytelling was passed down orally, um, and not written, because it was with oral storytelling, more than the words, you pass down the feeling. And that's what kids remember, and that's what other people remember. It remembers how you remember how it makes you feel. With oral storytelling, you don't have to know the story word for word. It's really like up for interpretation, but the point is that you get the gist with the emotional reaction and the way it makes you feel, and the energetic reaction in your body and all of that. And that's what makes the story the story. That's what makes it so powerful. And so I feel like that's why, so much of our society was also oral storytelling based, at least in the cultures that I come from. Like, I know um, in I'm South African on my mom's side, from the Xhosa tribe, and I I'm pretty sure it's like a very oral storytelling based um, recorded history when it comes to like culture and I think like spirituality and different belief systems and traditions and things like that. And then eventually, obviously, we got to writing things down. But yeah, that's where it grew from. Um, in Jamaica, I imagine it was the same thing because also we didn't really have access to uh, reading and writing. Not everyone did because it was slavery. So you weren't able to do, you weren't taught things like that. So maybe you did get that if you were taught, but if you weren't, then yeah, the language of sound is what you had, which is also a language of feeling, which is why sound healing is a thing because it has a frequency and it's connected to the energetic body and the feeling body, the emotional body, and the physical as well. That's why music moves so many of us. But not everyone loves music, which is so interesting, isn't it? Because I wonder if you can probably tell where somebody has a past life from based on whether they like music or not, because or based on even how strongly they have an attachment to music. Because I'm someone who like I don't know what I would do if I didn't have music. I spend most of my day listening to music. I always have my headphones in. I love music. Um, uh, but there's some people who it's not like that for. And I used to be like, until I had to humble myself and not be such a judgy jerk and realize that people are just different. And, what you consider to be your like really great characteristics are not a reason to put yourself on a pedestal above anyone else. So I had to check myself. Anyways, yeah. So Lemuria. Lemuria. I also feel like, because I'm looking at myself, I know that I feel like I had many lives. I feel like I had many lives in Lemuria. That's my hometown. And I think that in terms of like facial structure, and like appearance and things like that, obviously we all looked different. Um, but I think we also carried that fluidity in our physical being, meaning like I think the androgyny was a huge thing. And not like everyone just dressed very like what is considered gender neutral. Because if we really think about it, everything is gender neutral because gender isn't real. So everything that we um, everything that we do and believe in and every way that we express ourselves is gender neutral. It's just your personal style and what energies you like to tap into more and what frequencies and whatever, but everything is gender neutral if you think about it. And then maybe some things are framed for certain bodies and things like that, but yeah, it's all gender neutral. So that's not what I mean. What I mean is like I think um, maybe like in like our faces and in our bodies, I think it was just a lot. It was like I think it was a mix. I don't know. Like I feel like because you know how like in throughout time, like they've tried to really kick women and put them down by like building up what is the feminine body, and then they do the same to men. And this is speaking in like cis terms, the feminine body versus the masculine body, and then obviously that created rigid standards also for trans people because then it was like if you wanted to be able to live in your truth and embody, you know, the reality of who you are, then sometimes there might be pressure to dress or look a certain way that adheres to the extremes of femininity in order to be recognized as a woman, which is really unfair, but definitely a survival thing, I think, and especially when it comes to like passing. Um, and so all of those rigid ideas of what is feminine and what is masculine, and like even like the soft feminine, and like the way it's like, I just like sorry, I'm clearly have a problem with it. There's nothing wrong with soft femininity, whatever. But I just feel like there's, I guess what I'm really desiring is different words. I think I'm just desiring different words, or maybe I just don't want to have language to describe these things because it just makes it all so like ugh. Like, it's just so, I just want to get out of the binary. I guess I'm really settling into my whole being non-binary. Oh yeah, that's where I started. So with fluidity, I was saying that I think that it was open like that. Like you could, it was just giving you layers. And so I had this theory a while ago, which does not need to be true. Maybe it's just true for me. And so sometimes when I say things, I say we, and I say it as if it's the collective, but I am always just talking about myself, and you never have to apply things as if it's the good gospel. But, anyways, I was saying that so perhaps I have always existed with like non binary. For me, means the same as being human. Being non binary is the same as being human. Being queer is the same as being human. Um, and then it's like being a woman is like being um, is like being from Africa. You know what I mean? It's like those things are the specifics, or being like bisexual, or being straight, or being gay, or being whatever. But queerness, when I say queerness, I consider it just the whole scale of expression and of sexuality and things like that. And so, yeah, and I think that everybody's on that scale. And you can be more in terms of in the straight aisle, or you can be more in the gay aisle, bisexual, lesbian, whatever term connects with you, asexual. But we're all on the scale of queer. And I look at it for the same thing with non-binary, with gender expression. It's like we're all non-binary, and then it's whatever specifics you like, or maybe you don't want any specifics and you just want to leave it at non-binary and queer, or whatever works for you. Or maybe you don't like that at all, but that's something that's been healing for me. And I say that because I used to always, when I was younger, I've always used they, them in reference to other people, even when I knew their pronouns. And I've always been really comfortable with it with myself. And I used to think that, and part of the reason why it took me so long, or it feels like it took me so long to recognize that I'm non binary too, is because I used to feel like, oh, well, everyone just used they, them very in order to talk about specific people, um, until that word was created for non-binary people, and then it's changed. And it's interesting because I remember when it really started to change, because then people started to be like, oh, are they non-binary, when I would say they, them, and I didn't know. I just always had used that. And so when it came to writing down our pronouns, I started to wonder if I could include that. But I got nervous because I didn't want to take up space where I don't belong. And then I had to recognize that that's not possible, because your experience is your experience. And if you believe in yourself, and if you trust yourself and your truth, then what you feel is correct. There's no way to be wrong. Um, yeah, so anyways, I feel like it was fluid like that with being in Lemuria. Like, I think that everything could be layered, and you could be many, many things all at once, or you could be nothing and just be clear as water. But I feel like it was like the shape of water. You could take on a shape, or you could let that thing go and flow and spill out on the ground, or you could turn into steam, or and evaporate and be something else. You could become air. You could become whatever you wanted in one lifetime. You could go for many, many, many paths, and it would all be valid, and it would be true that you were all these things. And maybe it's like every time you shift or turn a corner, it's kind of like a death and a rebirth, which it's kind of like for water. Every time water is drunk and then comes into our body, it takes on a different life. Or when it goes into soil, it takes on a different life, or evaporates and goes into the clouds, it takes on a different life. It becomes air, it takes on a different life. Um, um, yeah. Um, so, yes. Oh, yeah, I put the rocks in the water because maybe I don't remember if I had already said this or not, but I was thinking about how I don't think that for Lemuria, and just in general, I think for a very long time, I think why it's sometimes hard to recognize that the magical is right in front of us and all around us and is literally our life is because we put such strict bounds around what is magical, and it's so aesthetics based. Which, you know, aesthetics are awesome and they're really fun, and they it's fun to explore different aesthetics. There's nothing wrong with them. I don't want to ever villainize anything specific like that, but I do think that sometimes aesthetics can be unhelpful when it comes to helping us recognize that everything is really cool and everything has a really interesting story and everything is alive in its own way. And I say that because I think that stones are also crystals, and it's not just the crystals that have, like that glimmering light or are beautiful colors or, clear and soft and smooth and things like that. I think that everything is a crystal. Anything that is dense in form, I believe, is a crystal. Anything that's dense in form that's created from like the earth, like rock material, is a crystal. So I'm gonna take this out. My nails are kind of gross. Like this stone. I believe this is a crystal, and I believe that this is one of the devices that they locked a lot. That in Lemuria, a lot of the answers were locked into. A lot of the information was locked into, embedded within. And I think that they chose to do that specifically because, well, first, I just think that it was a thing that everything was recognized as magical and as a crystal, and maybe not as a crystal in the scientific term. I know that for science, there's certain things that are deemed crystals, but when it comes to the spiritual community and what we consider crystals, I think that what we consider crystals in Lemuria, all stones and all rocks were considered crystals. So all the huge mountains were considered crystals. And maybe it was a different term that they used then, and maybe not the term that we use for science and things like that. I don't know which one was used first for which, but either science needs a new term or we need to have an expansive term. I don't know. But yeah, I think that all rocks are considered crystals. And I was talking, but I don't know if I wrote it down, because when I was at the place that I was at, I was talking about rocks with this woman who's really, really interesting. And she's a geologist, and she was talking about rock formations and how it's basically a great way to look at time travel and history over time because of the different ways that they're layered, and just like the different forms that they take as they build up and then they break down. It's a really great like death and rebirth cycle. And what I didn't realize, I learned so much about foundational, like the foundation, the root, while I was in this place. It was beautiful. It was surrounded by nature, and I learned a lot about how like soil is created. I didn't realize that rocks, as they broke down and broke down and broke down over time, that's part of what, formed soil. I didn't know that. So that was really, really cool for me to learn. And yeah, that was a whole thing. And even like, um, 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 yeah, looking at how like our compost and all of that is used to create soil and fertilizer. Like I feel like in Lemuria it was like whole thing use, like whole body use. And in the same way that we recognize all the different bodies that we have, I feel like they recognize all the different bodies that, everything has, including, you know, the stones and the rocks. And I think that rock consciousness is the same as ours. I have a really difficult time accepting that we are like more conscious than other things. I just really don't believe that. What I believe is that maybe we move at different paces. Maybe some things are faster and some things are slower. In that way, I relate to like science and like how energy moves slower in dense things and moves quicker in other in lighter bodies or things that just are more fluid and open in space. But I don't believe that we have more consciousness than anything else. I think we all have the same consciousness and access to the same amount and all of that. We all have shared portals within our bodies, and it's just about at what pace the energy moves. And so, like, how much you download in one lifetime, how much you want to share, or what your focus is, and things like that. But I don't think it's that we have more than them or anything like that. And maybe it's just because I really, oh, it's gonna bother me. Maybe it's just because I really don't like, sorry. I know that's gross, but life of an eczema kid. Anyways, that's because I don't like hierarchies. And so I just have chosen not to believe that because you create your reality. So yeah, I don't believe that. But anyways, all things, all rocks have the answers. Everything, it all has the answers, I'm telling you. So you don't need to go to expensive crystal stores to buy a Lemurian crystal or whatever to feel like you're connecting to crystal healing. Just go get a rock off the side of the street. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. And you'll find answers in it. Just like how you don't have to go to like sacred rivers and things like that to get answers out of water. You can go to your tap, open it up, and there's the magic right then and there. And that's like, that's what's so unfortunate about the struggles and the oppression that's come with advancements, because like the way that we've advanced as a society, I actually don't think we've gone backwards. I think we're just adjusting and learning, but I don't think we've gone backwards, because if anything, everything is a lot more accessible, and magic and the way that we all can and tap into our power, I think, is a lot more accessible. Everyone and anyone can be a healer, and everyone and anyone can access the full scale of who they are if they so choose to pursue that path. I don't think it's cut off to anyone. I think it might be harder for some people because I think that soul plans and things like that do end up getting in the way in terms of just how much you believe in these types of things, and then so what you are willing to pursue. I'm trying to keep this flat. I'm going to cut my hair when I go home. Cut it low and dye it and make it like a lilac purple. But anyways, yeah. I also wonder if the color of our hair changed in Lemuria based on our moods, like a mood ring. I'd like to think that it did. Oh, so anyways, what I was saying was that you, like, with technology and with infrastructure and agriculture and all those things, it's brought struggles, it's brought some disconnection, but it's also brought a lot of healing and a lot of an easier life, which is nice and which is good. And it's the incarnating being advocating for themselves and wanting something better for themselves, which I don't think that we should judge. And I understand, because I'm one of those people who wants to move back to the countryside and have a life like that, but I don't want to just move there and then have nothing. I want to bring aspects of advancement. I just want it to be balanced. And I think that that's exactly what our ancestors were hoping would happen. They created the foundation for growing beyond having to survive off of so much of just chance and really always be in a survival state. They wanted to make it so that we had room to do other things and focus on other paths happily. Because one thing about being alive back then is it's not like everyone was getting to be a magician. Some people got to do that. Other people had to focus on hunting and gathering and doing other things. Not everyone got to be the community healer, and that was a lot of pressure on the few people that were. And it was a lot. It was stressful. It was a lot on the body. It was a lot on the mind, It was a lot on your spirit. So now, what our ancestors have done for us is really incredible, because they've made it over time. They ended up having to take a little bit of the awareness of magic away but it was a sacrifice that they trusted would end up paying off and coming back around. And now look at us, 2022 or whatever year it is for you, and we're coming back around to magic and it being more in the physical. It's here again. It was a long term investment. It was a risk that they were willing to take, and I'm glad that they did because I wouldn't want to live in a world that didn't have as much access. I believe that all of these things are very beneficial. I believe that AI and all of these things are very, very beneficial. And all of the struggles that come with that, we can heal and we can work through and turn into something better. We just have to believe in ourselves and we have to understand that things take time. It's kind of like with my grandpa on my mom's side. He's an incredible person. He's an incredible person. And I really am just so excited to become rich and maybe have a little bit more limelight so that I can honor him and honor my family's story on both sides. But because I haven't learned a whole lot about my Jamaican ancestry yet, but I will be going into that more. But I know a lot so far around my South African ancestry and the people in my family, and they're incredible. And there's just a lot of history that needs to be honored and people who need to be honored. And I want to create like whole museums and things like that because they're so awesome. And it's just not fair that, you know, maybe it's just ego, but I want their legacies to be grounded and I want it to be like a thing that, you know, you go to South Africa and you hear these stories, and not just my grandpa, you know, everyone who did work during apartheid and before that and all that. But yeah, it's just important and it's history that I don't want to lose, and I don't want them. I really am hoping it can happen before he passes on because he's awesome. And yeah, and so is my grandma and so much of my family. But anyways, he was talking about how there's a disconnect between the youth in South Africa, the black youth, and the older generation of black people who were doing a lot of like activism work during apartheid. Um, and the youth are like, what's going on? Like, let's make moves and things like that. And for the older generation, you know, things are slower and there's corruption and things like that. And it's very frustrating. But he was saying how there's a disconnect because it hasn't been expressed, or older people in the generation have not told the youth about the plans that were made. They didn't talk about how all of this was already like, they understood that it would kind of happen like this. And it's just the process of creating an independent nation. You know, South Africa is a baby when it comes to being an independent nation separate from colonialism. And it's not really separate from colonialism yet. But when it comes to getting to that state, it's a baby, like still learning how to walk, let alone talk. You know, we're thinking about changing the name and things like that, but all of that is still in the works. But it's hard when you don't know that because that hasn't been communicated to you as youth, and so you think that your elders are just like they don't care, or they're just betraying, you know, the path that they once had. And there's just a lot of misunderstanding because there's not that connection between the older generation and the younger generation. And that gap is also something that I've dealt with here in North America, in my family, on the Jamaican side as well. And just as a culture, you know, there's a real gap between youth and elders. And it's unfortunate because there's such gifts to be shared between us, and to learn from each other and to remember things together because both of us are so close to the portals on each side of life and death, birth and death. And so it would be such a gift to be able to be together. And I think that they were talking about, my friend was sharing with me that there's this society, or there's in another country, it might be somewhere in the Netherlands, like in old folks' homes, they have like they bring children around, and that makes so much sense to me. And I feel like that's something that we should embody over here too. And yeah, but I think that those types of relationships were critical in Lemurian society. I think that everything was connected, and family bonds and relationships was really important, and everyone was kind of family, and we all took care of each other. And if we could feel each other's needs, we could feel each other's pains and woes and struggles. And so in that way, we all kind of were engaged with and in involved and in invested in each other's not only survival but happiness. You know, um, yeah. And chicka chill, like P Diddy. Got my glasses. I'm out the door. I'm gonna hit this city before I leave for my keys with the check. 'Cause when I leave for the night, I ain't coming back. I'm talking. Wake up in the morning feeling like P Diddy. Maybe there's also fluidity around your soul. I feel like the soul could move. Like I feel like because you know how like astral projection is a whole thing. I think I think you could probably go into other people's bodies and like interact with their souls. I feel like okay, and I don't think it's like a scary thing where it's like and like you're hosting somebody else's body and then you're left there like and then like the other person is like like I think it was because we because we didn't have a whole lot of boundaries in a good way. Like boundaries are very good and important, but because we didn't have so many restrictive boundaries around spirituality, and so it's like kind of like schizophrenia. Like I feel like we just were out here in each other's heads and in each other's bodies, and I also feel like that was part of like the sexual energy. But I do think that we were able to probably move from body to body as spirits, and not just our souls but our incarnating spirits, because we as incarnating beings have our own separate spirit from the soul. And it's the same way that our bodies have their own separate spirit from us. And so does our mind. And yeah, yeah, I think our mind does too. I think our heart is something that goes with everything. But I've never really thought about if the heart has its own separate spirit too. If it does, oh, I think, okay, I think maybe the heart does have its own separate spirit. Oh, my heart spirit. That's just so loving. Anyways, so like our incarnating spirits, I think would be roaming the place, out and about. I feel like we would be moving into other people's bodies with their consent, of course. It was kind of like if you had an open door or not. And if you didn't, like, I think you could probably energetically tell. It's almost like, it wasn't like you were just going in. It's almost like when you left your body, it was like you could knock or something and then wake up in someone else's body and they could still be there, and you would just be engaging on a different level. It's just like accessing different realms. I think we moved through different realms really easily. And because all of our cells were so in tune, I think that our bodies were still functioning and the rest of us were still functioning, even if the incarnating soul was off doing something else. We could still move around and have a whole, life, because you can be everywhere all at once when you understand that, time is nothing and all the timelines are one. Really, in every realm, you are there. It's just like switching perspective, but it's just multitasking, honestly, which is what Earth is all about. And Lemuria was the first place on Earth that, we really started to show up. So, yeah. Wake up in the morning feeling like P. Diddy. And I feel like we probably did that with not just each other, but with other creatures as well, which is where like mermaids and centaurs and like all these other, human animal mix come from. I think that that was because of that shared consciousness. And ooh, and maybe like centaurs and mermaids were created by the body soul moving out and mixing up with another animal creature's body soul and giving birth to this mix of a creature that is really lovely and very beautiful and creating its own existence. So you see what I mean? Like things are complicated, and that's when sex also becomes very complicated. So I think that in Lemuria, it was also very. That's why I said it was very free love and very fluid. Like I think you could be having sex with multiple people, all at once, like based on your different bodies and your different souls and spirits going where they wanted to go and being with who they wanted to be with. Or you could, have your whole self engaging with one person's whole self, and it was whatever. It was all good. It was all groovy and awesome, if you ask me. Um, Wake up in the morning feeling like P. Diddy. Got my glasses on at the door. I'm gonna hit this city before I leave. Wash my teeth with a bottle of Jack. 'Cause when I leave for the night, I ain't coming back. I'm talking pedicure on my toes, trying on my clothes. Boys blowing up my phones. Drop top and playing our favorite CDs. Going out to the parties. Trying to get a little bit tipsy. Oh, okay, so that's the other thing. When I was younger, someone else tell me if you've had this experience before, but when I was younger, I would constantly experience variation in time when it comes to movement. Like sometimes my world would exist in like fast forward. It would be like, and sometimes it would be like literally, not like in my mind, like it would actually exist like that. Like I'd be like, and then I'd be like, and I would have to really consciously bring myself back to a normal or like a pace that worked for me. But I would like in like physically, like it was a condition. Like I thought that something was wrong with me. I was like, what is happening? And the more that I didn't ever really think about it. After I forgot about it, to be honest, because it was something that used to happen when I was like in middle school, and I think I had learned how to get it under control by the time I was in high school. But it was definitely a thing of like my younger years. Um, and yeah, but I ended up getting it under control and then I forgot about it. But I was reminded a couple of days ago, and since then it's kind of come up in my mind a little bit. And TikTok, that song, oh, I guess even the name, is making me think about that again. Because I think in Lemuria we had access to different speeds. Like, oh, like, well, same thing. So if I wanted to embody the energy of a rock and get into their consciousness through their speed level, then I would just take it on, because I think everybody in Lemuria was an empath. I think everybody on Earth is an empath. Everything on Earth is an empath. We all take in each other's energies. We're all affected. It's just a whole thing, in my opinion. So yeah, and then I would experience life in slow motion if I took on rock consciousness, and it would be like a physical change that would happen in the reality. Or if I wanted to take on the consciousness of light, and then everything would be like, like I think that was a whole thing, because I'm like, why did I have that experience as a kid? And I think it was like a past life gift or like a memory, just like trying to integrate into this life, because it was trippy, and it was so normal for me that I was just like, oh, I'm moving in fast in what is it? Fast motion? I'm moving in fast paced again. Like it was, I can't even really explain it to you because it hasn't happened to me since I was a kid. It was something I learned how to manage. I remember learning how to manage it. I don't remember how I did it. I think I probably like just had to really ground myself. I think that's the first way that I learned how to ground myself. Because I remember I had to be very intentional and be like, okay. I don't remember exactly what I did anymore, but it was serious. Like it would trip me up. I would just be going one moment from being like this and everything not being super slow or super fast, to the next minute, really slow. And not just me in my head, everything. And so, but it would be confusing because other people weren't moving in like slow motion, but I was processing them that way. But because other people are still individuals, it would be like a mix of like what I'm used to, like this normal pace, and then slow motion. It would be so weird. It would be completely jarring. And then, or really, really, really fast. The fast one I think might have happened more often, and I could begin to feel when it was coming on, and so I learned how to kind of like almost like soothe it and calm it down. That was such an interesting phase. It happened when I was younger. I particularly remember it being significant during my time in Seattle when I was in middle school. Yeah. It was so strange. Maybe it was beyond that, but I remember it really from my childhood. But, anyways, I think that things like that were really common. And it was like, but you were able to control it more and it was more intentional. Like, you didn't just fall into it. It was something like if you wanted to experience a different pace of life, it was almost kind of like a drug, because the same way that when you're high, like off of like when you've had smoked weed or you take an edible, I've never tried any other drugs beyond weed and shrooms, so I don't know what it's like for other things, but when you're high it's like a different pace. It's kind of like that, and I think that, but it was natural because I obviously I wasn't doing anything when I was a kid. I wasn't doing anything, so that type of experience though is something that you can activate within yourself without anything. It's kind of like the drugs are just initiators, but you can get there on your own. It's just you just have to tap into a different part of your brain. But like I said, I think that we lived primarily from our left brain when we were in Lemuria, so I think that we had access to that. And I think maybe I was really left brain focused as a kid, maybe, but I couldn't write with my left hand, so I was always so jealous of the people that could. But but yeah, because that experience was super trippy. Don't stop on the clock until you see sunlight. Um, Yippee doo dah day. Woo, oh, woo, oh. I also feel like portals were as easily accessible as drawing them out. You know how like in magic movies they have their wand and then they like do Expelliarmus and then like they draw a circle and then like the sky opens up and you can walk through. I feel like it was like that in Lemuria, except instead it was sacred geometry. So all of like the different symbols and things like that, those were portals. And I think you could get into the portal through either like the little like different sections within the sacred geometry or through the whole image itself. Like you look at it and then you go into it. And I feel like maybe your physical body would stay and remain with the paper and with the image. But I think that maybe your mind would go into it, and I think your soul could go into it. I think the physical would maybe stay, but everything else could go if it wanted. Things that weren't as dense, things that could be as light as paper. And I think that maybe that's also the gift of trees. I wonder, did they have paper all the way back then? I don't know. I don't know, because then maybe it was actually like carved into things and not written on paper. But in the same way, it's like you're sitting there and you're not there. It's the same thing with astral projection, like how your body's still there, but you're not. Your body soul is there watching out for you, but you're not there. Like your incarnating spirit's not there. I think it was the same thing for sacred geometry. And you know what? Because it makes me think about these. Oh, is it the Dungan people? Hold on. Wind. Uh, Wind Spirit African Spirituality book. Ooh, no, that's not the name at all. Of Water and the Spirit. Yes, but who is that by? By Melidoma Patrice Some. Yes, and he was an African shaman. Yes, okay, so he's a part of this tribe, the Dagara people. Okay, calm down. Sorry, my computer's just like, it's like, why are you making me function at multiple levels? I'm sorry. You're so kind to me. Anyways, the Dagara people. So he talks about in his book of wind and of water and the spirit, and he talks about like these kids are going through this initiation process, And so one of the first things they have to do is sit in front of a tree and wait. And I think that they're waiting for something to show up. And so what ends up happening is he really struggles because he's trying to like see something and nothing's happening. And eventually, and he's the only one left there. And then eventually, a goddess shows up in the tree, but it's after he's long gone, given up. Or not really given up, but he's just not attached so much to something appearing that he sees then the goddess. And the goddess is really there. Like, she's not like in your dream, she's there. And he goes and he hugs her. And like, it's a whole thing. And so it was making me think about that because it's kind of like astral projection where like you're there, but you can also be, once you let go and surrender, then the many bodies of you can also be there and go beyond your physical body, trusting that your physical is going to be there and going to be safe and watching over the rest of you. The physical is like the house, it's like the ancestors, your physical body. They're always protecting you, always guiding you, always making sure things are cool. It's also it's also ancestors that help us to expand and create new life forms combined with combined with the human body. Like it's ancestors that created like mermaids and things like that, which totally feeds into my theory that there were a whole new race of mermaids created during the Middle Passage, because I think the spirits of the ancestors, like their body souls, created life with the different sea creatures. And I do think that there were like star seeds, like aliens that were in the water that helped our ancestors. And no, maybe they didn't come back to life up here, but I think that they have their own existence down under. And I feel like they're out here doing and rebuilding their own underwater societies. And I don't care what you say. Anyways, so what was I saying though? Ooh. Yeah, but with like the Dagara people, so you're sitting there, but once you surrender, your consciousness sees other things. And he went and he hugged the goddess. And when she said she had to go, he didn't want her to go, and he held on like it was a physical. And so that's also applying the physical to the other bodies. It's not just this body that holds and touches and feels. This body is our main resource to connect with the 3D and things like that. And it is a gift because this body informs that the rest of our bodies are able to feel. If this body can't feel, the rest of our bodies are barely feeling. You know, this is the center. This is like your physical body is like the root chakra. You need this. You need this to be good and intact for the rest of your energetic bodies to be good. But if your physical body can feel, it can share that consciousness with the rest of your bodies so that like your incarnating spirit can feel and hold on to something, even though it's not really physical in the same way that this is physical. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's just that everything was fluid in Lemuria, and everything is fluid now, and Lemuria is Earth. So it's really just about remembering. We've just forgotten because we needed to. And don't let anyone bully you or bully us incarnating beings and earth beings into being like, well, look at, you guys forgot all your history and look what you've created. We sacrificed this for a reason. We knew we'd forget. They didn't, the Lemurians didn't die with their history. They chose to put their stuff into the rocks. They chose to put their information into the water. It was an intentional effort. It wasn't just that they assumed that it was going to be there and be safe. No, they had to make the intentional effort to go and do these things to protect their history. And that also meant taking from what they knew and putting it in the rocks. It was a sacrifice of knowledge and awareness. They gave it up. They gave up levels of consciousness and put it into the earth so that we could discover it later on. It was a sacrifice, an incredible sacrifice that they had to make, because they also see the fluidity of time and understood that we were going to go through many generations, many eras of not remembering and build something new. And it was important because it's not always true. Don't let that term, sometimes we have these terms that we just settle as fact, and it's like, oh, history always repeats itself. That's not true. the Lemurians, if history always repeats itself, the Lemurians wouldn't have done what they did. They wouldn't have made the sacrifice they made because it wouldn't have been worth it. History does not always repeat itself. When you don't know your history, you create a new path because we are constantly pulling from source and constantly pulling from the unknown. Maybe some things pipe up that have also existed in other timelines and other experiences of the world, but it doesn't mean that everything is just a full reflection of the past. And even if so, reflections are never true. Reflections are only uh, it's like a mirror, but the mirror lies. The mirror is not how you actually look. You will never know how you really look. You will never know what you look like. You can get a guess based on mirrors and cameras and things like that and images, but you'll never actually know. The only people who know what you look like are people who look at you. So it's a very reliant system, which is really good because you don't need to know what you look like. And don't use that inverter filter if it's going to make you feel insecure. Like, what is the point? You know, sometimes you have to ask yourself, why am I doing this? But anyways, what was I talking about? Yeah, history does not repeat itself. And I really don't like that term because it's violent and it's bullshit. And I think about my people because in Jamaica, we don't know our full history. I don't know the full history of my people. I know generally what area of Africa I might come from. I don't know the tribes, so I don't know the spiritual practices that we had. I can guess based off of the things that I'm interested in this lifetime. But who knows if that comes from that family line or something else. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But not knowing your history doesn't mean that you're bound to repeat. And they always say that as if you're bound to repeat all the bad things. And it's like, well, maybe actually, because when you don't know your history, you're kind of like, in a way, you're kind of like a brand new baby. And babies don't just grow up, they're just not inherently bound to make horrible decisions because they, but babies do know their history and things like that. But I just mean when you're kind of a blank slate and you don't know anything about Earth, you're not just bound to have a horrible life on Earth because you don't know anything about it. And I mean, I don't know if they've ever done any experiments around it, but I think if we didn't teach anyone, like, this is what Earth is like, and we just let people experience Earth, I don't think it would necessarily lead to everyone having a horrible experience. I think that we create our realities. It's whatever you want. And look at what Black people in America and Black people across the diaspora and the Caribbean and in South America and everywhere where we've been robbed of our history. Look at what we've created. A bunch of new shit. Also, jazz. That wasn't there before. That was created by Black Americans. People who didn't have their history. You know what I mean? All these new inventions, all these new ways of being, all these incredible expansions. And maybe jazz existed in another realm, in another era on Earth. But we pulled that shit from, we were accessing timelines and things like that. And it's magic when you don't know something. It's the beginner's mind. It's a gift to not know. It's a gift. So don't let anyone make you feel ashamed because you don't know. And there's no shame around wanting to know. I want to know. I want to know where my people might have come from. I downloaded or I bought this ancestry kit. I'm excited to take it when I get home. But I also don't feel ashamed. I don't feel ashamed for not knowing. And I don't feel lesser than. I used to. It took me a long time to get to this point. But I recognize that there are gifts that I have, and because of spirituality, I'm able to still connect with my ancestors on both sides and learn about them and talk to them and honor them in the ways that I can, regardless of not knowing what part of the world they come from. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, and everything's fluid anyways. And really, we were from like all of the world. Like, I know that they say that Lemuria was like close to Australia or New Zealand or whatever, but I think Lemuria was just like an energy. I think it was just a vibration on Earth, and so it existed everywhere. So you could be from anywhere on the planet and be in Lemuria. You know what I mean? I think it was about the energy. And yeah, and I think that we were traveling through like the clouds and the colors. I think that color magic, I don't know what it's like about or anything, but I think that we could time travel through colors or teleport through colors. Anyways, I need to see if I can get an extension on my checkout. Well, please dial 0. Maybe it's not open yet. Okay. Anyways, so it's not really answering the phone, so I guess I'll just need to go downstairs. Well, we got quite a good little chunk of information out of that, didn't we? Yeah, we did. That was quite nice. Oh yeah, you need to literally use y'all need to start using the earth to channel some information, because I'm telling you, it's entirely possible. It is entirely possible to get information from just the rocks in the water. You don't need a book. Not that there's anything wrong with books. Look, I love a good book. And also, you know what? Stop listening to this whole theory of nonfiction versus fiction. That's just energy, but everything is real, which means everything is real. Every bit of nonfiction, every bit of fiction is real. Mythology, real. Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, real. Harry Potter, real. Lord of the Rings, real. Arrival, real. I'm telling you, there's answers in it all. It's all, but they're mirrors, right? So it's not completely accurate, but it doesn't matter. Use your discernment. I'm telling you, we're missing out on a wealth of information that I was going to say that niggas just be channeling, but it's true. There's answers in songs, there's answers in a TV show, there's answers in everything. Everything. I'm telling you, don't let them trip you out of your education through the fiction. The fiction is just as real. It's reality. It's just a different reality, but it's still reality. Okay, well, I didn't pull any cards. Can I just say, it's giving she's a channel. It's giving she's a medium. I didn't pull a single card. And that's over an hour. Come on. Ooh, y'all, do you want me to do a bone reading? Hold on, because I do need to go downstairs because I have to check out of this hotel at 10 or 11. I tried to call and they didn't answer. And I'm a little nervous because I read my horoscope for today and it said that I'd be dealing with realities and just how much people can block my access to things. I'm like, why didn't I call yesterday when I had a better horoscope? But I create my reality, and so I don't accept that to be the truth, and period. Oh, this is my tarot deck. I haven't used my tarot deck in a while. Ooh, not judgment. She's so funny on this card. She's like, oh, yeah, I'm supposed to be using my bones. Oh, well. Thanks, Spirit. Oh, look. The Tower. Change your damn perspective. Oh, this is my nephew. This is my nephew card. Whenever I see this card, I think of my little booby whoopie. I miss him and I'm gonna see him today. But like really late, but still. I'm gonna see him today. Ooh, you guys, do you wanna see? I should do a collector's haul, but I don't have, well, I could still do a little collector's haul and then tell the stories behind the different divinatory or divination tools I have. These are my bones. I got these bones from the place that I was at, and they were a gift from the ancestors and the chicken spirits and the earth and the land and man and spirit. And so we shall do a son of sticks and father of sticks. We talking about that father bond. Okay. Well, anyways, I thought maybe I would do a little bone reading. So we have these bones. Aren't they so nice? I think they're really, really nice. I think they come from chickens, I'm pretty sure. And let's do a little bone reading. Don't look at my, yes, because I am not wearing any clothes. But I don't think that matters so much. Ooh, I see one that wants to come out. Anyways, girl. Oh, damn it. I know, because I'm trying not to interfere, but okay. So, Spirit, any last information about Lemuria that we should know? Anything you want us to tell Lemuria? Do you want to say nothing or anything? Rock the boat, rock the boat, rock the boat. You know what? Bones always make me think of boats. Whenever I see a bone, in so many of the readings, whenever I see the bones, I always think of boats. I always think of boats. Oh my God, you know what that makes me think of? The body is like the boat on the water, which is like the energy. So if you want to think about like how your different energetic bodies work, maybe it's like the body is the boat and the water is the energetic body. And then the air above the water and the boat is like is maybe the spiritual body. Ooh, but that's interesting then, because it's not really like this. It's kind of like this or like this. You know what I mean? That's interesting because I had this, I guess it's a download that I got a while ago where it was like, it was kind of like switching out your different, not levels of consciousness. Well, I guess so. Like the different dimensions of you. And it was kind of like turning them. And so it wasn't like from within, and then into the out. It was like, I don't know. But that just makes me think that the bodies exist in it's not like layer. And you know what, that's interesting because that connects to the rock, the geology history. Because my friend was saying like it's like some rocks, you get layered like this, but then at some point it turns to like this because this is how it breaks down. But then it ends up building up like this. Then it's like this and like this. And it just builds in all these wacky ways. And that's probably also what the body is like. And what they understood in Lemuria is that you're existing at many different angles and in many different positions. And so you have to be fluid and able to move into those. And so it's like all movement was like a dance. And it was sometimes choppy. And that's also with the speed, because you're transitioning at different speeds, but it's like a dance. And some of your bodies are a lot more far out, and it's just like, but that means that you're over there, and you don't need to be close in order for you to feel it, because that's the whole thing. We're feeling on many different levels, and it also just shows the expansiveness and the wideness of our bodies, and of our spirits, of our entire being. We're very, very big. We've got a lot of energy going on. Rock the boat, rock the boat, rock the boat, oh baby. Yeah. Is there anything else? Work the middle till it had a little. Them bones. I'll be cracking myself. Ooh, why are you moving? Well, maybe everything is moving. Yeah, and some things it's more easy to tell that it's moving, but we also need to make our understanding of movement very fluid, because sometimes it's like this, sometimes this is movement. Yeah, sometimes that's movement. Because you know what's moving around me? Also me. All those little particles on the screen, that's me too. That's movement too. Get your vibrations in check. Work the middle till it hurt a little. And isn't it so funny? Because we're always like, oh, in the spiritual community, it's like this huge thing to be like still, right? And it's like stillness. Um, and they're like, oh, I'm high vibing when I'm able to be like still and meditate or whatever. Um, and then, but then we also make fun of density, and we make fun of the slow pace that happens in lower vibrations. How do we know that we're not actually tapping into like 1D when we're high vibing? That's why there is no high vibration versus low vibration. It's all just a whole little gunk of a mix. And you're just going to the pieces that you want to go into. And when you don't recognize it all feeds into each other, that's how you get isolated, and then you have problems. Work the middle till it hurt a little. I have such a desire to end this video at 1111111, but I'm not going to do that because that wouldn't be natural. But I do want to. But I actually don't know if I do have that much more to say. Rock lover, rock lover. Oh baby, work the middle till it hurt a little. No. And also understanding that your things will eventually break down. The gifts that you have will eventually turn into something else, and that's okay. And I think the reason why we took many different paths in Lemuria is because we understood that, you know, you have a gift. Like this bone will be a bone for a while, but it might not always be a bone. It's gonna eventually break down. It might take a while, but it'll change into something else. And when it changes into something else, that something else is still really awesome and great. It's just not what it was once before, and just accepting that things will evolve, and that what it was before, it might not ever be again, and that now you have something new to learn. And so always it's like Sagittarius, it's like always balancing the teacher energy and the student energy, and understanding that you're always going to be both, and you're always going to be walking the line between being the teacher and being the student, again and again and again and again. Okay, I think I'm done. I also really do need to go downstairs and ask if I can check out late. So, thank you so much for doing this reading for me, or with me, and being with me. And I think I'm not going to shave my armpits anymore. I don't know. I haven't like really settled into it, but I think I'm not going to. Just going to embrace that life. We'll see. But yeah. Okay, so thanks, and love you guys, and I really hope that we learned a lot about Lemuria together. I feel like I learned a lot. And thanks, Spirit, as always. And thank you, Lemuria, and the earth, and thank you, water. Thank you, stones. Thank you. Yeah, you guys are the loves and the lights of my life. So, this is